Chapter 13. You are concealed in a dark corner of the garage. You feel the ground rush up at you as your bones compress. Hair grows on your hands, on your face. Your nose twitches. Your body becomes sleek, and the ferret mind urges you to play. There are so many things to investigate in the garage. Wonderful smells, things to eat. You wrench your ferret brain under control. Keeping to the wall, you get close to the group. The elevator dings, and the first group crowds on. You slink closer. Do you dare risk boarding the elevator? The lights on the elevator are bright, and you'll probably be noticed. Normally, humans would scream if they saw a furry creature in a small space with them. But you have a feeling controllers wouldn't care. And besides, you have no choice. You slink in between the legs of the controllers and head for the corner. The doors close. "We have company," one of the controllers says. They all look down. "It's not a cat," someone says. "It's not a dog," someone else observes. The controller who seems to be in charge turns and gives you a dismissive glance. "Catch it. I'll throw it down the shaft." "Busted." You can't react, or they'll suspect something. "Wait," Tom says. "I've seen that animal. It's a ferret. Belongs to Humphreys. Maybe we shouldn't touch it." Chapman said to take no chances. "All right." The other controller turns back, already bored with the conversation. "You're safe, for now." The elevator indicator lights up the sublevel floor. It's as far down as the parking garage goes. But the controller hits a series of buttons, and the elevator doesn't stop. It keeps going down. The door opens onto a room that seems carved out of dirt and rock. Sheetrock is nailed up against the walls. You slink out of the elevator and follow the group into a concealed door that leads to an iron staircase. You go down, down, down. Your eyes adjust to the light, and your nose picks up the smell of dampness. You hear something, a comforting sound that reassures you for a moment. Like waves against a shore. But then you hear the screams. Human cries of anguish. Suffering. And you pick up a horrifying familiar smell. Toxins. You don't want to see what's ahead. You don't want to move. Dread fills you. It's so much more enormous than being afraid of a test, or the dentist. You've only hesitated a moment, but the controllers have disappeared around a turning. You dart forward. The first thing you get hit with is how huge the space is. It's maybe 3 times the size of the mall. And it's all completely open, and carved out of rock and earth. There are still enormous pieces of earth-moving equipment down there, as though the space is constantly being expanded. You notice other staircases winding up and disappearing. There must be secret entrances all over town. The Yerks are much more numerous than any of you imagined. Then you notice the cages. They are filled with humans and Horkbuyer. Women, children, men. Some of them are screaming. Some of them just sit numbly. Taxons and Horkbuyer patrol outside the cages. Occasionally, one of the Horkbuyer lashes out with a tail blade and rattles the cage. The humans shrink back, and the Yerk-controlled Horkbuyer let out these huffing sounds that must be laughter. As you watch, one of the Horkbuyer opens a cage and leads out a woman. She struggles, and the Horkbuyer casually holds a bladed wrist to her throat. You have no doubt he would slash her in a second. The Horkbuyer leads her onto a pier. It goes out over a pool that looks as though it's filled with moving sludge. He forces her head under the surface. When he jerks her head back up, you see a gray, slimy thing finish slithering inside her ear. The woman doesn't struggle anymore. And then you see Tom again. His head is bent over the pool. The same slimy thing slides out of his ear. Immediately, he begins to scream. You can't hear the words, but you can imagine. The Horkbuyer puts a blade to his throat. It takes 3 of them to get him to a cage and throw him inside. You feel sick. Sick to your bones. You can't fight this. You should turn around and go back up while you can. Wait to fight another day. Because it's hopeless. You didn't think it was possible. But you want to give up. Then you see Cassie. She's being held with the other humans. Waiting for a Yerk slime to invade her brain. Guarding her are 2 Horkbuyer and a Taxon. It's still hopeless. But a rage fills you and sends your blood pounding, and you're ready to fight. Chapter 14. You scamper down the steps. No one notices you as you dart across the floor. You look like a mole, or another creature of the underground. A breeze tickles your fur and whiskers. A breeze? Down here? You look up. A hawk has just flown over your head. It circles the air above Cassie. Tobias? Is that you? Who is it? It's me. I'm a ferret again. Cool, Tobias answers. We need all the help we can get. The others are about 20 feet behind you. We have to save Cassie. Keep an eye on her. I'll be back. You scurry across the floor toward the others. Hey, it's me. You call in thought speak. Look down. Marco almost jumps to the ceiling. Why did you have to pick a rat? He whispers. I'm not a rat, I'm a ferret. I'm closer to a cat or dog than a rodent. I like humans. I don't bit. Great, Marco mutters. A rodent who pretends to be a dog. Just what we need. You know, I can always make an exception with the biting thing, you add. Jake bends down to speak to you. If I were you, I'd morph back to human. You might need a better morph than ferret. This place is crawling with taxons and horkbire. All right, you say. But Jake, I saw Tom. He's here. In a cage. I saw him, Jake says tersely. His face tells you everything. You can't imagine how awful it must be to see your brother like that. You scurry behind a storage shed. Quickly, you morph back to human. Rachel pokes her head around the shed. You'd better stay here. You need to gather your strength if you're going to morph again. We'll come back when it's time. You lean against the storage shed and close your eyes. You concentrate on slow breathing, gathering your strength for the next morph. It's not long before the others return. But they've been spotted. What are you doing back there? It's a human controller. Standing next to him is a horkbire, blade arms at the ready. A taxon stands on the other side, his spidery legs twitching, red jello eyes glowing. Suddenly, you notice someone behind the guards. Rachel. Only it's Rachel with a long, long nose. A trunk. She's morphing into an elephant. A braying noise fills the air as Rachel feels the elephant's power. She impales a horkbire on one tusk and steps on a taxon as though it were a spider. The human controller runs away. Let's morph. Jake cries. You look over at Cassie. She's almost at the end of the pier. That gives you an extra burst of strength. You concentrate hard. You feel something grow out of the back of you. A tail. Your ears get round and your head gets big. Your teeth sharpen into deadly instruments of terror. You're a fierce, hungry, and very angry hyena. And you have no fear. You start toward Cassie, but a taxon gets in your way. No problem. You rip into him with your teeth. He tries to bite you back, but you are such an efficient killing machine that he is dead before he registers the pain. Marco is now Big Jim, a huge gorilla. Rachel is trumpeting a fierce call as she mows down another horkbire. In tiger morph, Jake springs at a taxon. You own this place. Marco tosses another horkbire in the air like a doll. The rest scatter. So they are afraid of something. Marco is the only one with dexterity, so he heads for the cages to unlock them. Jake is already bounding toward Cassie. You start forward to help, but a horkbire heads for you. He swipes at you with an elbow blade. You spring. You tear at his flesh, then jump away. You strike again, this time for the vulnerable fleshy part near his head. Wounded, you expect him to fall back. But instead, he springs forward, his elbow and wrist blades flashing. Rachel raises a foot and stomps. Thanks, you tell her. Another puny horkbire bites the dust, Rachel says. She sounds positively bloodthirsty. Tobias swoops down and claws at the eyes of the horkbire who is holding Cassie. She breaks away and runs. Morph. You yell along with Jake. Now. Even as you watch, Cassie's hair grows into a beautiful mane. It streams out behind her as her legs extend, and she goes down on all fours. It is amazing to see. I say we follow Cassie and get out of here, Rachel says. I'm right behind you, you say. The people Marco have released are panicking, running toward the stairs. Horkbire and taxons try to round them up. You slip through them, running hard. Cassie and Jake leap over surprised taxons. You remember that horkbire aren't great on strategy, so you fake left and then go right, sailing over a long pair of wrist blades that try to slash you at the last minute. You gain the stairs. Balls of flame explode over your head. You leap over a taxon who is aiming a Drakon beam at you. Straight into the path of Visser 3 in his Andalite form. The horrid, evil voice fills your head. Well, if it isn't a bunch of renegade Andalites. He begins to morph into a creature tall as a building. 8 legs. 8 arms. And 8 heads. You can feel that even the hyena inside you feels doubt. You can't take on this creature. You can't escape. Visser 3 cries. You filthy creep. It's Tom. Jake's brother launches himself at Visser 3. No. Jake cries. He springs at the huge creature that is Visser 3, straight toward the eyes. He claws at the face. Visser 3 howls in pain. Fireballs explode. One almost gets Jake. Tom falls off the stairs. Jake, run. Cassie cries urgently. With a howl of anguish, Jake turns and heads up the stairs. Rachel begins to demorph as she climbs so she can fit in the stairway. You can't run. Visser 3 cries. Oh yes, you can. The stairway narrows. Visser 3 hadn't counted on your making it that far. In his huge morph, he can't make it upstairs. You run and you run. You break through the janitor's door and back into school. You keep on running until you're outside, in the safety of the trees. And then you all morph back. You're safe. For now. You look at your friends and see the same exhaustion on their faces. Even Marco can't come up with a joke. Cassie puts her hand over Jake's. Rachel stares back at the school building, her eyes blazing. Tobias flies closer and perches on her shoulder. You know that more terror lies ahead. You know that safety is now an illusion. You will never feel truly safe again. Excellent morph. Continue for your next Animorph adventure. Chapter 16. Pizza for dinner? Your mom says. Awesome, you say. It's a Saturday afternoon. You just returned from the mall. Sometimes, you just need an ordinary day. You've been on plenty of missions with the Animorphs. Your close calls have given you nightmares. You are living in a world with new rules. Sometimes, you think you'll go crazy. Sometimes you want to go crazy. Living with stark terror every day will do that to you. So whenever you can, you try to do something normal. As much as morphing into an osprey might be fun, it isn't normal. Not by a long shot. So when you called Jake that morning to ask if anything was up, he just sighed. I say we take a day off from saving the world, he said. The smell of green peppers fills the kitchen. You watch your mom chop. She makes her own pizza, and it's the best in town. Can we have sausage on it? You ask. Mom grins. Sure. It's Saturday. Let's live a little. You reach into the refrigerator for a soda, and flash. The heat presses against your skin. You hear the call of birds and insects. Where did you guys go? Rachel asks. And where are we? Cassie wonders. And why don't I have shoes? Marco asks. Flash. And a nice green salad, Mom finishes. I have to sneak something healthy in there. Your hand is cold. You look at the sweat beating up on the can. Whoa. What was that about? It was so real. The heat had been just as intense as the cold in your fingers right now. Can you hand me that garlic? Mom asks. You nod and reach for a garlic bulb in a bowl on the counter. You hand it to Mom, and flash. Really, a monkey morph? Marco says, lifting an eyebrow. Listen, I've been a gorilla. That would be quite a demotion, don't you think? Marco, I'm just wondering, Rachel says, her hands on her hips. Do you always have to make things difficult? Is it like, your hobby? It's my life, Marco says. Flash. Would you do me a favor and pick some basil off the plant? Mom asks. Sweetie? Are you okay? I'm okay, you say. But you're not. Something is really, truly wrong. And you have to find out what. It sounds like a Sario rip, Jake says worriedly. You've ridden as fast as you can on your bike to Jake's house. You only have a half hour before dinner. Axe is there, too, and he looks just as worried as Jake. He'd been eating his very first licorice whip, and he'd been really enjoying it. But he stopped when you blurted out your story. Not again, he says. No, not again, Prince Jake. This is not good. What's a Sario rip? You ask. Are you sure it was a jungle? Jake asks, instead of answering you. Or was it a rainforest? Like I can tell the difference? You ask. You're starting to feel impatient. Jake turns to Axe. But I reverse the rip. How can this happen? Axe shrugs and begins to chew on the end of the licorice. I don't know. When they taught about Sario rips in class, I was not paying attention, Jake finishes impatiently. I know. Young Andalite females can do that, Axe says. He slurps up another inch of licorice. This tastes red. Rrrd. Tastes red. Red duh. Cherry, Jake says absently. It's cherry flavored. Will somebody please fill me in? You demand. A Sario rip is like a hole in space-time, Jake explains. We've all experienced it, except I'm the only one who remembers it. That's because I died back there, but not in this time, so I was able to come back. Oh, thanks, you say. That clears it up. Totally. The thing is that Axe said, you need some sort of huge explosion to blow you back, Jake says worriedly. I guess maybe it hasn't happened yet. Terrific, you say. Something to look forward to besides pizza. Nuclear annihilation. Unless we're in a rip right now, Axe puts in. A rip within a rip. Jake frowns. What does that mean? Axe shrugs. It could be his first shrug, because he looks surprised at the motion. He does it again for practice. I do not know. I am just guessing. Want some licorice? He holds a piece out to you, and... Flash. Chapter 17. The trees soar above your heads. The leaves make a canopy so dense it blocks out the sky. The heat presses against your skin. Whoa! Jake cries. What's going on? Wait, you say. You mean you know you're here? With me? It's the same place, Jake says, spinning around. Hang on. He darts through the trees, and you and Axe follow. You stop abruptly when Jake does, bumping into him. In a small clearing is a bug fighter. It is scorched and trashed, as though it had crash-landed. This is totally freaked, Jake whispers. I'll say, a voice says. It's Rachel, who steps through the trees, Cassie and Marco at her side. Where did you guys go? And where are we? Cassie asks. And why don't I have shoes? Marco asks glumly, staring at his bare feet. I've been circling above, but all I see is a green canopy of trees, Tobias says in thought speak. He swoops down and lands on a tree trunk. I'd say we're in a rainforest. I can try to see if there's a city or a village nearby. There's no city, Jake mutters. Pray tell, how do you know, oh fearless leader? Marco asks. I just do, Jake says. He frowns. The first thing we have to do is take the onboard navigating computer. Visser 3 will be coming back for the bug fighter. How do you know this stuff? Cassie asks. The last thing I remember I was on the bug ship. We were shooting Drakon beams at Visser 3. It's a Sario rip, Jake says. Quickly, he summarizes what has happened. So how do we get back? Cassie asks. You can tell she's trying not to look scared. I'm not sure, Jake admits. Last time, I had to die. I don't especially want to do that again. Are you all thinking what I am thinking? Axe asks suddenly. Marco rolls his eyes. What are the odds of that? Think about it, Prince Jake, Axe continues. You have been given a second chance. Last time, you made mistakes. What I mean to say is, you made good decisions, but things went wrong. Thanks for trying to make me feel better, Axe, but you were right the first time, Jake says wryly. We walked right into Visser 3's trap. But this time, we will not walk into the trap, Axe points out. We know what is wrong to do. Now we must do what is right to do. You're right, Axe. Jake says excitedly. We've been given a second chance. And the first thing we should do is not take the onboard computer. Can you just disable it instead? Make it look like it happened in the crash, but be sure that they can fix it. That will slow them down while we follow through on a plan. I can do this, Prince Jake, Axe says, nodding. He takes off for the bug fighter. What plan? Marco asks. Call me crazy, but I have a feeling I'm not going to like this. It's simple, Jake says. We're going to sneak on board the blade ship. Already, I don't like it, Marco interrupts, groaning. And destroy Visser 3, Jake says grimly. Then we'll recreate the rip and get back to our own time. Sounds like a good plan, Rachel agrees. Especially the destroy Visser 3 part. Of course you'd think so, Marco says. What do you need morphing ability for? You're already an animal. The question is, what should we morph? Cassie asks. We have to get through the rainforest, and we're barefoot. How about monkeys? Really, a monkey morph? Marco says, lifting an eyebrow. Listen, I've been a gorilla. That would be quite a demotion, don't you think? Marco, I'm just wondering, Rachel says, her hands on her hips. Do you always have to make things difficult? Is it like, your hobby? It's his life, you say. Marco gives you a strange look. I was going to say that. I know, you say. Come on, guys, Jake says. We have decisions to make. We have to acquire morphs that will help us cope with the rainforest. But we also need morphs that will help us sneak aboard the blade ship. And we might need the help of that tribe you met last time, Axe says as he reappears. You said they were pretty helpful against the Horkbuyer. What about using an ant morph again? You suggest. You point to a tree. I read about those ants. They're called parasol ants. They can climb hundreds of feet. And we'd be so small we'd sneak onto the bug fighter with no problem. That's true, Cassie says reluctantly. No way I'm being an ant again, Marco says, shuddering. That was the worst. You all begin to argue about what morphs to acquire. But you're running out of time. You might only have time for one morph. You choose. A monkey. A parrot. A parasol ant.